Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock and this is Let's Rant with Scrapper using Power Wash Simulator. We were cleaning the playground and we're about halfway done and we're going to resume our job and do another rant. But before we do the rant, I want to sort of talk about where we are in the job. And so when last we left off, we had cleaned all the outer areas like the benches and stuff. We had done the Stegosaurus and we had done this merry-go-round here. But we hadn't done a bunch of the bottom of the mat. We just sort of done the edges and a couple of other little spots. So I cleared the flooring, and now we're going to do the jungle gym and all of that stuff. So that's what we're going to start doing. And in the meantime, we're going to, like, as we go, we're going to rant about today. This topic comes from Alex Macris. His channel is called Arbiter of Worlds. He's the guy who wrote the book Arbiter of Worlds. It's an excellent book. And his second, I think, he's just starting a new series of videos where he's talking about sort of GM theory. So kind of this, he's doing sort of rants like I'm doing. And his second or third video is about whether it's the GM's job to provide you with fun. So that's what we're going to be talking about today as we clean the buildings and the jungle gyms and stuff like that. So is it the GM's job to make sure that you have fun in a role-playing game, right? Is it the game master's job to see to it that the players have fun? And Macris's position is that it is not. And my position is going to be in between. I'm not going to say that it is or that it isn't, because I think I agree with him on one hand and I disagree with him on another basis. So let's talk about what Macris says. He points out that you can't consider it to be the GM's job to make all the players have fun because, like, you can't make somebody else have fun, right? You can create adventures that are designed to be fun, but you can't make somebody else have fun. And it's really not the job of the GM to be providing fun. It's the job of the GM to provide adventures and arbitrate the session, and it's really up to the players to make their own fun. And I think, to a certain degree, he's of course correct, because you can't make somebody else have fun. Right? There's no way that you can. And sometimes things that are fun for you aren't going to be fun for somebody else. And as a game master, you can't read people's minds or their emotions. You're not Deanna Troi. You're not an empath. And you really can't ensure that somebody else is having fun. Hang on, I've got to pause it because I have a phone call. It was, of course, spam. As it always is. It always seems to be. So where were we? We were talking about how you can't, there's no way to ensure somebody else is going to have fun, and you can't read people's minds and emotions to guarantee that you're giving them fun, to test whether you're giving them fun, and that sort of thing. And so Magris's position, which is reasonable, is that on that basis you can't really expect the GM to provide fun for you, and rather the GM just provides the adventure, and whether it's fun or not is kind of up to you. And I think he's right about that. But on the other hand, I have said this before, I think that in a role-playing game, it's not just the game master that is responsible for fun. It's everybody. And what I argue, and what I've argued many times, is that we are all stewards of each other's fun. And so, in as much as the GM is one of us, is a player at the table, then the GM is a steward of your fun just like the other players are. The GM is not more responsible for everybody's fun than everybody else is. I think that's one place where I would agree with Macris, because the sort of general popular, if you want to call it that, view in sort of the 2020s about game mastering is that it's the game master's job to make sure everybody has fun, right? And what I would say is it's everybody at the table's job to make sure everybody else at the table is having fun. And that, yes, the GM is responsible for it, but no more than any other player, right? We're all responsible for the fun at the table, right? If you look at, say, Matt Colville's video about wang rods, right? What's he basically talking about? He's talking about people who are not stewards of each other's fun and who consequently ruin the fun at the table for each other with the excuse, quote unquote, it's what my character would do, right? And so anybody who's doing that is not being an appropriate steward of the fun other people are having at the table, and therefore they're not helping the table to achieve the fun, the maximum fun for everybody, which is what we should be trying to do. So whether you're a player or a GM, I would argue that it is part of your duty, your job at the table, all of us, to protect and steward each other's fun. And so I think that the GM is no more or less responsible for this than anybody else. And although it certainly can seem like the GM has a stronger ability to make people either have fun or be miserable, any player can cause the other people at the table to have fun or be miserable, not just the GM. I mean, it's super easy to ruin the fun of other people at the table if you're not being careful and not being courteous, and you're being rude and nasty to each other, or you're basically being a wang rod, right? It's really easy to ruin other people's fun doing that. And so, although the GM is the most obvious person who can ruin, like you'd sort of more obviously see how a GM could ruin fun by, like, killing off the characters, or making sure that, or making an adventure that isn't any fun or whatever. Other players can do that too, can ruin it too, simply by doing things that are ruining the fun of the rest of the group. And so, so I would argue that the GM is not the only one. The GM is not more responsible for fun than everybody else. But everybody is responsible for having fun at the table, and the game master is responsible for it as much as everybody else, right? It's equal, shared responsibility. If there are 5 players in a GM, everybody has a 1/6 responsibility, as it were, for helping everybody have fun. And the thing is, it's not, in a way, it's not just 1/6 responsibility, because the reality of things, the way role-playing games work, is that a single player can do a single thing or two, just a little bit, and by doing that little bit can wreck the entire session for everybody else, right? Or maybe just for one person who's made miserable by whatever it is that they're doing, right? Matt Colville describes a case in his Wangrod video, right? He describes the example of their game group where it was old school D&D. It was old school D&D, so that the thief, in order to, like, pickpocket or do any other thiefly abilities, all he had to do was make a skill roll. There wasn't an opposed roll. And the cleric had a holy symbol, and he couldn't cast any spells without his holy symbol, right? It was a requirement of the class that you had to have a holy symbol on you, I guess, to do your holy spells. And so, to annoy the cleric, right, the thief player was pickpocketing him every night. Like, when the thief was on watch, he would go over and pickpocket the cleric and steal his holy symbol. And then the cleric couldn't cast any spells the next day, right? Because he didn't have his holy symbol, so he couldn't cast any spells. And so what Colville says was, the rest of the players thought this was hilarious, and they laughed about it, right? They thought it was really funny. But of course, the cleric's player was being made miserable because he wanted his character to be able to cast spells, and this was not fun for him. And so all this thief player's character, all the thief was doing, was just one skill roll on what we would now call every long rest. That's it. When they would rest, he would make a skill check and steal the cleric's holy symbol, right? And that's it. It was just a D100 roll, and just that roll was enough to make the cleric's player completely miserable. Okay? And so my point here is that you can, just with a single skill check or 1 minute in a session of play, completely ruin the fun of another player. And so it doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take a long time. It doesn't take the whole session or multiple sessions, right? In just a single 1 second, 1 minute roll, just saying I'm going to steal his holy symbol, and he can't do anything about it, and you just do it and laugh, and you think it was fun, right? But the cleric's player doesn't, and the cleric's player isn't having any fun, right? And so this is what I mean. It's not just up to the GM, right? The other players can ruin each other's fun too. And I'm really grateful that, at least with my group, people seem to be well aware of this, and they're trying not to harm each other's fun as best they can. In our last session of Deadlands, which was about a week ago, the one player who's in Finland, actually, she's really, really good. She, like, her character was trying to convince my best friend's character, who's super impulsive and goes off half-cocked a lot. She was trying to convince my best friend's character not to do something reckless, right? And my best friend, of course, playing an impulsive character, she wanted to do the reckless thing. And so the girl from Finland said to my best friend, "Is it okay if I do a little PvP here?" And he was like, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, I'd like to make a persuade check against your character to see if my character can persuade her not to do this, right?" And she said her character is attractive and gets bonuses to persuade members of the opposite sex that find her particular sex, his sex, whatever the male character's sex, attractive, right? So basically, he gets a bonus when trying to do persuasion to heterosexual females, right? Because, or to gay males, I guess. And so my best friend was like, "Sure, go ahead and do it." My point about this is not like what they were specifically doing, but that they are being stewards of each other's fun, right? And they're talking about it out of character, right? What do we want to do, and is this going to be right? Basically, what the girl in Finland, what her question to my best friend was, "Is this going to be fun for you if we do this?" And he was like, "Yeah, cool, go for it." And she made the persuade check, and so my best friend was like, "Okay," and he role-played it, and it was fine. But they were being stewards of each other's fun by cooperating and collaborating and not stepping on each other's toes, you see. And so this is what I mean. When you're being a steward of each other's fun, that means that you can't just try to override what each other's doing, but rather you have to do everything you can to try and make sure that what you're doing is acceptable and fun for the other people. And so that's why I say, like, it's not just the GM. We're all stewards of each other's fun. Yes, the game master should be trying to make fun adventures, and it is partly the GM's job to help make sure... Why can't I put this here? To help make sure that the other players have fun, okay? But the other the players at the table also have to worry about this. I thought I got this hood here. Is it on the other side? Oh yeah. There we go. So, um, so you definitely want to make sure that you're not doing things that are going to ruin the experience of other people at the table and reduce their level of fun. So always trying to make sure that we're helping each other have fun. And if you come to the role playing session with the mindset that it is at least partly your job to help other people have fun, okay? Then not only will you do that, right? But if everybody does that, then everybody will have fun, right? Because if everyone feels like it's their job to help each other have fun, then it's inevitable that you're probably going to have fun, right? It would be very unlikely that you wouldn't, right? Because you all recognize that part of your job at the table, in addition to sort of playing your character, right, is to help the other players have fun with their character. Right. Another example of this is, and I think I may have talked about this. I can't remember now. But I was toying with, for my best friend's campaign, I was toying with the idea of possibly making up a monk in the Mr. Miyagi tradition, where martial arts is only for defense, never for attack, and that I was going to have this monk that wasn't willing to start battles, to attack by surprise. He was going to be very honorable. He wasn't going to be willing to get flanking bonuses against people and stuff because he didn't think it was a fair fight, and so on. And one of the things I think I said, and I'm pretty sure I recorded this. I can't remember if this might have been one of the videos I didn't post, but before I played that character, my plan was to ask the other players if this is okay with them, right? Are you okay with this? Now, my guess is, knowing my group, they'd say play the character you want, but I would have been very adamant that I only want to do this if it won't ruin the fun for you guys. Like if we have somebody who's a rogue and they want to do a lot of surprise attacks and sneak attacks and stuff, I don't want to ruin it for them with my character refusing to do that, alerting enemies to the potential danger of this hidden rogue who's going to sneak attack them, and now the rogue can't do their abilities and stuff like that. So my my intent with something like that is always to make sure that everybody has fun and that I'm not doing anything that could harm the fun of the other players at the table, right? I would rather make up a different character that people can have fun with. Let me give you another example. This actually happened in our Deadlands game. One of the things we did was we talked about lines and veils. What things don't we want to roleplay about? And the woman from Finland said she didn't want to roleplay about violence toward children. Now, one of the things I immediately thought about was, well, in Coffin Rock, the game we're playing, there's a ghost of a little girl who was murdered, I guess, and she's in the schoolhouse, and if you go into the schoolhouse, she haunts it, so she attacks you and stuff. And I said, okay, well, it's easy enough to just change the character in the schoolhouse, the ghost, to be the ghost of a teacher. So I did that. Then one of the other players wanted to make up a character who's a child, right, with the young hindrance. And he immediately said to the girl from Finland, look, I don't want to trigger that, that, uh, that was a line, right? So he said, sort of almost by definition, in a role-playing game, if I'm playing a little girl, she will be in danger, right? She will take damage in combat, like she's going to get wounded, and I don't want to upset you, right? And the woman from Finland clarified that no, what she doesn't like is like actual child abuse, and she just said it's okay to put it in the game, but if you don't want me to derail the entire adventure by going after a child abuser, don't put it in the game, kind of thing, right? And I said, well, I don't worry about that. So, I mean, I still left the student, the dead kid, the out of the module because um, one of my uh, one of my concerns is that like, it doesn't really say in the book who murdered her, and I knew um, if I portrayed her as, having been, oh, how am I going to get up there? If I portrayed her as having been murdered, then this one player was going to want to um, get revenge or get justice, and I didn't want to sidetrack the campaign onto that because it really has nothing to do with the actual story of Coffin Rock. And so I just said, we'll make it a teacher, and then they won't need to get revenge, right? Presumably. All right, I guess I'm gonna have to get the ladder and go upstairs. So these are just some examples of me as a GM saying, okay, I'm going to alter the published adventure in a way that hopefully won't upset this player. Won't trigger isn't the right word, but won't be the sort of thing that she said she didn't want to role play about. And then one of the other players said, well, okay, she said she didn't want to role play about violence toward children, but I'm kind of a walking violence toward children scene if my character is a child and we're going to get into combat, right? And he asked her if she'd be okay with that, and he said, if you're not, it's fine. I have other character ideas I can use, and it's no problem. Can I get up here? Here we go. So that's what I mean by being a steward of somebody else's fun, and basically being a guardian and making sure that the other players at the table are having fun with whatever it is that you're doing, right? You always want to make sure that what you're doing isn't ruining the fun of somebody else. Now, when I've talked about this in other circumstances, actually when I was running a mush, I had somebody respond and say, well, what about my fun, right? The Wang Rod saying, well, but it's fun for me to steal the holy symbol of the other player, and them saying they don't want to let me be a thief is ruining my fun. Well, yeah, but your fun is being had by wrecking the fun of somebody else. That's a little different, right? So I have much more sympathy for the cleric with the holy symbol than for the rogue who's trying to steal the holy symbol. Maybe it's just a bias on my part, but yeah, I don't feel like that's a reasonable excuse for this, and I think it's really just selfishness on the part of the person playing the rogue or the thief. The same goes for, the whole party wants to engage in a dialogue with an NPC, and you have your character walk in and just, oops, fell off the roof. You have your character walk in and just start attacking. And now they can't engage with this NPC. There was actually somebody on D&D Beyond who talked about this, saying that one of the players in their party, in their group, was doing this sort of thing, and I think it was a GM actually complaining and saying, "What do I do?" Because he's upsetting the other players who want to talk to these NPCs, and you can't talk to them when they're dead, right? So now, not only is he making it like ruining the scene and turning a non-combat scene into a combat scene that nobody wants to play except him, but he's also making it so that they can't ever develop a non-combat relationship with this NPC because he's killed him, right? And he was doing this over and over again with multiple NPCs, as I recall. So again, this is another example of a player, not a GM, whose actions are causing the other players to be unhappy and ruining their fun. And so you just have to be very careful with this. And as a player, the thing is, if you have the mindset that you're going to be stewards of each other's fun, I keep hitting the wrong key. If you have the mindset that you're stewards of each other's fun, then you're not going to do stuff like steal the holy symbol from the cleric, because the cleric's not liking it, and you're not trying to harm his fun, right, or her fun. And so you definitely need to pay attention. And it, you know, this reminds me of my mother's uncle, who was really awesome. And when I first learned to drive, I was a little nervous about it, to be honest. I didn't want to admit it to anybody else, but I guess I admitted it to him. And he said, "What you have to do is remember the three C's." I told a friend of mine this, and he just sort of rolled his eyes. He said, "You got to remember the three C's." And I said, "What are the three C's?" And he said, "Caution, common sense, and courtesy." Now, I don't know that you need caution in a role-playing game, right? Because it's fiction. But if you recognize that you just need to have common sense and courtesy, and realize that stealing somebody's stuff might upset them, right? And maybe you shouldn't do it, and have the courtesy not to be rude to your friends at the table. Yeah, if you just have caution, if you just have common sense and courtesy, a lot of problems can be solved, right? Because it's the Wangrod is basically being discourteous to the people at the table and not being a steward of their fun, right? So always go into it with a mindset as a player. What my job tonight is not just to have fun for me; it's to make sure I'm helping everyone else at the table have fun. By the way, it's not just guys. I'm not doing something that's lowering the fun of everybody else. That's like minimum. But you should also be saying to yourself, what can I do to raise the fun of everybody else? To make it more fun for everybody else. You should be trying to increase the fun at the table, not failing to reduce the fun, you see. I'll tell you one thing I don't like about this game. I mean, I understand why they do it, right? When you get it like partway clean and there's just a little bit of spot here, they'll, like there's a little bit of spot right there. They'll, um, you know, register it as all clean, and it's clean. And I think they do that so that you don't get frustrated by constantly having to find tiny little spots, which I like. But for the bigger structures, as you just saw with the roof, there's this huge, big amount of mess on the roof, like that big, and it just vanishes. And that kind of destroys the, shall we say, immersion. Even in a game like this, I like having immersion and feeling like I'm really cleaning something. But I do recognize, having played this game enough, that they kind of needed to do it that way, because otherwise you'd be hunting around for the last little molecule of grime and you won't be able to find it. And, depending on the resolution of your monitor, it might just not be possible to find it. And so I guess they decided, when you get it close enough, they give you credit. And I think for smaller structures like the bridge slats here and that sort of thing, it's perfectly fine. It's just when you get to a really big structure like that roof, you'll see this huge giant splotch still on it, and then it just vanishes. And that's a little immersion breaking. So anyway, I don't know. Let me know what you think. Do you think the GM is actually more responsible for fun at the table than everybody else, or do you agree with me that everyone is equally responsible and that we all have to be the protectors and guardians and stewards of each other's fun? Well, let me know what you think. I'm going to keep working on this. I will pause the video here, and I'll bring you guys back at the end so you can see the before and after. Alright folks, we're back. There are just 3 things to go. Climbing pole guard, I think that's over here. A large bridge slat and 2 tower trims. So the pole guard would be up there. So let me get up there and see if I can grab that. So we're mostly clean, if you remember. Oh, hey, I really hate climbing in this game. This is one thing I don't like. It's just very awkward. So where is the climbing pole guard? All right, so one thing you can do is you can click that, and it will highlight it for you. Ah, right there. Okay, so this thing isn't clean. There it is. And then the large bridge slat. So this is a small bridge. This is the large bridge. So one of these slats is not clean. We can find that easily enough, I hope. That one. And that is clean, and now we just need the 2 tower trims. So let's see what we're talking about here. Tower trims. There are 2 of them. That's a support strut. What's a tower trim? That's a support strut. That's a support strut. Where are the tower trims? Vertical struts. Alright, I'll keep looking, and I'll bring you back when I found them. Okay, it's the stuff on the bottom, so something down here is not finished, it looks like. Possibly inside. And this one, it looks like, wasn't done either. That one's finished, and that's finished. Job complete! So, this is how it started, and you can see we went around, we did the ground, and then we did the towers, and then we did the jungle gym at the end here, and we got a nice, clean playground. And we now have a whole bunch of money, so we can go into the shopping center, and we can grab for extensions. So one of the things I want to do is the 0-degree nozzle that increases the area of effect. That one's really cool. We want to get our soap nozzle, and then we want to get our medium extender. I think that's enough for now. And so now we have a bunch of new equipment that we can use, and then we also want to look for cleaning liquids, and we want to grab kind of as much of this as we can. Just get it all. So now we have tons of cleaner that we can use, and then what I like to try to do is, let's say and it turns out you can walk around here after you're done with the job, but I didn't realize that. But like, let's say we are in a space where like there are little splotches on here and we can't get them clean. It's hard to get them clean. You can just turn the soap on, and if it's the right type of soap, like metal soap, and just go back and forth, and that seems to take care of it much more quickly. Or like if there's graffiti on something, that can also be really hard to take care of. So there's a little golf cart to do. I'm going to do that off screen because it doesn't take much. And then we will clean this detached house next time. Again, it's probably going to take more than one episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this conversation about fun and who creates fun in a role-playing game. And until next time, I am Scrapperlock, and this has been Power Wash Simulator.